Iran is feeling it. The U.S. blockade of Iranian ports is fully implemented. Central Command announcing 0 ships have made it into or out of those Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz. The president's blockade is turning up the heat on that Islamic regime, possibly forcing it back to the negotiating table even as soon as in a couple of days. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper says this. In less than 36 hours since the blockade was implemented, U.S. forces have completely halted economic trade going into and out of Iran by sea. The blockade is a military operation. According to CENTCOM, more than 10,000 service members, more than a dozen U.S. warships, and dozens of aircraft are involved in this. And this picture gives us a very clear look at how the blockade in the Gulf of Oman is being enforced. The Gulf is a larger body of water near the Strait of Hormuz that provides more space for military operations. And from that vantage point, our military can identify ships earlier on the sea and track them over a longer distance. That leaves more time to determine whether ships can have passage or need to be turned around. And that is happening. President Trump is talking about the progress due to what you see there.
It's been pretty amazing, actually. I thought that was going to happen. They reacted to this even, I think, we've obliterated them. And this almost seems to be more of a reaction than we had before. I think it's close to over, yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. But we'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly.
Retired Black Hawk helicopter pilot and battalion commander Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub in focus coming up. First, let's go to senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy. Peter.
Harris, officials here at the White House insist, they are owning high gas prices, but they insist they could have been higher.
If you told me that we were going to be at only $92 a barrel, $92 a barrel, I would have been very surprised.
All right.
And you know what? I'm very happy. And it's going to come dropping down very big as soon as it's over. And I think it can be over very soon.
So
if they're smart, it will end soon.
The president is confident his Monday warning to China not to send weapons to Iran or else has been heard. He posted, "China is very happy that I am permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. I am doing it for them also and the world. This situation will never happen again. They have agreed not to send weapons to Iran. President Xi will give me a big fat hug when I get there in a few weeks. We are working together smartly and very well. Doesn't that beat fighting? But remember, we are very good at fighting if we have to, far better than anyone else." We also just heard about how long it might take for high gas prices to come down.
Oil and natural gas. And these are the very energy products that the Biden administration tried to shut in and prevent Americans from having access to abundant, low-cost energy. And that's certainly where the president wants to take us with having energy security and having international stability. That's what he's working toward very quickly. And that's what small businesses are going to be benefiting from in the long term, along with deregulation.
Administrator Loeffler and the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent are going to be in the briefing room in less than 2 hours, making the case that certain Trump policies are actually putting more money in people's pockets, despite these persistently high gas prices that might go higher. Harris.
Yeah, tax season, the president was setting that up with that interview with Maria, and it sounds like tax season is going to help offset some of that with all the deductions and things, no tax on tips, those sorts of things. Peter, thank you. I have been reporting on this, did so again yesterday, because I'm watching the money that blockade is costing Iran. Their economy was already in trouble. And this will really fill in the gap on how much they hurt economically and why that is so effective. Not a bullet fired in all of this. Iranian regime, that radical Islamic regime, is losing $435 million a day because their ships cannot go in and out of their own ports along the Strait of Hormuz with oil in them. And that includes $276 million in lost exports, what they could sell to other countries. Ouch. It's also hitting them with more awful news on inflation and currency valuation. Here's more from the researcher who did all of the analysis that I've been keeping up with.
they have probably around 13 to 15 for 16 days enough storage for oil, to store oil that they can't export. When they run out of storage, then they're going to have to drop oil extraction. Dropping oil extraction is going to cause not just damage to their oil exportation or extraction volume in the long run, but it's also going to lead to unemployment rate increasing. It's the heart of Iran's economy. It accounts for 70, 80% of Iran's revenue that it uses to run the government operations.
Oh, they're feeling it. The Wall Street Journal editorial board calls the blockade a, quote, crisis for Iran. Also says the economic damage is immediate and threatens the regime if it tends to last. In focus now, Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub, a retired Black Hawk helicopter pilot and battalion commander. So great to have you in focus. Look, have you ever seen anything like this blockade? The efficacy and the quickness, not a bullet fired.
I sure haven't. And in fact, I was trying to think back to how long has it been since we've seen American naval forces take part in a blockade, frankly, of almost any size. And I was hard pressed to find something later than the American Civil War. And before that, it was around the War of 1812. You could stretch that into the fight against the Barbary pirates in the Mediterranean. So this is something that's always been in the Navy's book of tactics and things they can do. We just haven't had to or been in a situation where it was needed. So this is not a historic first, but it certainly is the first in a very long time.
Look, something I was following this morning, the Pakistani military chief has arrived in Iran, and mediators are seeking to set up now a second round of U.S.-Iran peace talks. If that can happen, that would be perhaps in the next couple of days. Your quick thought on that, because that idea that I've heard you say before, peace through strength, it's what the president has said. It's actually working in this instance and could lead to more peace talks. Your thought?
It could, and I think peace talks are always worth pursuing. If it takes a few more days to get there, that's certainly fine. And I prefer the blockade and the economic consequences to get us there in the first place, rather than the continuation of hostilities. First of all, we don't want to have to use American forces in fixed sites like Karg Island or otherwise, and the blockade is more effective and achieves the same results. But if we keep pushing on the economics, then maybe the Iranian dictators will realize where they truly are and come to the table and make a real enforceable deal. Still a bit of a skeptic on whether they're willing to do that, but it's always worth a try rather than going back to another bombing campaign.
Well, the latest on NATO's role in the Iran conflict. Quote, European countries are putting together a plan for a broad coalition of countries to help free up shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, including sending mine clearing and other military vessels. But the plan would only come after the war and may exclude one country in particular, the United States. France and the UK announced that it will be a video conference meeting set for Friday with some 40 countries expected. And the president posted this earlier today. NATO wasn't there for us, and they won't be there for us in the future. I mean, this isn't just like a few words going back and forth now. This seems real.
It does, Harrison. And having worked with NATO extensively in the past and served over there among multiple different nations, it's in some ways it's sad to see where this is going, and that's the choice of the European NATO nations for the most part, and not so much our choice. And it's a challenge because what NATO could be is such a positive thing, but it's turned into more of a political leverage point than it is a military alliance, and its future is at stake here, I think, personally. And if they really wanted to be part of this solution, they could have been part of it a long time ago, rather than waiting until we've done all the heavy lifting.
I want to squeeze in one quick question, because I know that you have fought, and no doubt you've perhaps been on the battlefield or in concert with some British forces. What is going on that they can't see, that special relationship, particularly between the UK and the US, is something that they really can't survive without?
I think this is the difference between the politicians and the militaries ultimately, and specifically I'm talking about the more junior levels in the military. British SAS, their other forces, they're some of the best in the world. We have great relationships with them. But I think, as often happens, the politicians get in the way, and the relationship is built around them rather than those of us who served together proudly in the past and would do so again if called upon. I hope they can come around and realize the relationship needs to stick and can be positive into the future if they just want it to.
All right. Colonel Gaub, thank you very much for being in focus. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.